you like your bikes sporty, naked and dripping in performance, then you've come to the right place. This is our 2025 Naked Sports Bike of the Year shootout, and we've got these 6 fantastic contestants that we're going to be putting through their paces on a multitude of tests to work out which one is most deserving of your money. So to give you a bit of a breakdown on the agenda, this element of the test is all about road performance. We want to understand which is the best handling, the best stopping, the easiest to get on with, the one with the best tech, the most road inclined of our propositions. And to make things that little bit more spicy, today we're here at an airfield where we're shortly going to be finding out which is the quickest to get out the blocks, the fastest to get hauled up, and which one is the best at doing all those silly things. Before we get cracking, let's take a look at the contestants.
So first up, we have got the brand new Honda Hornet SP. Totally new bike for 2025. It's got a slightly detuned Fireblade engine from the 2017 Fireblade, and the SP version gets Öhlins shock at the rear and Stylema calipers at the front. 154 horsepower in this, the SP version, and a price ticket of $9,999 makes it the cheapest bike on the test by a country mile. Say hello to the Aprilia Tuono V4 factory. Lots of V4 Italian goodness. For 2025, it's had a good, thorough going over. The engine is now up to 1099cc. Another 5 horsepower takes up to around about 180 horsepower. Elsewhere, we've got wings all over the place. We've still got the same chassis as the RS34, including that absolutely gorgeous underslung swing arm. There's some upgrades to the suspension at the rear with a new linkage. And as is the way these days, the electronics has had a thoroughly good polish as well. At 18,950, it's a hell of a lot of bike. Say hello to the Yamaha MT10. This bike's been around since 2016. It got a little bit of an update in 2022, specifically the addition of the R1 electronic suite, which really is this bike's ace card. About 160, 165 horsepower, from that brilliant cross-plane engine, which is also out of the R1, slightly detuned. 12.5 grand. It's an absolute stalwart of the super naked class, and we're happy to have it here. Well, here's one we've all been waiting for a while. Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RX limited edition. What you got here is a Speed Triple 1200 RS, but it's got clip-on handlebars which are 69mm lower and 52mm further away than they are on the RS to completely change the dynamics of this bike and throw a load of weight over the front. The Speed Triple got a big update this year throughout, and the big news is, as well as a little bit of horsepower extra from the engine, we've got the EC 3.0 suspension from Öhlins. It's in a snazzy colour. It also gets a trick end can and this top yoke. Really looking forward to getting stuck into this one. At 18,995, it's not the cheapest, so it better be good. And coming in from Austria, we have the fabulous KTM Superduke R. This is the base model R, so not the Evo. So we've got regular suspension here from WP, 180 odd horsepower, 17,990 on the price tag. This bike is big on capacity, 1350cc from its V-twin engine. Big on fun, big on smiles, big on torque. This bike has always been a favourite of ours, and it's always done really well in these tests. So you know what, it's got some new faces to deal with in 2025, so let's see how it gets on. And here we are from Germany, the BMW M1000R. Now this one, the eagle-eyed amongst you will recognise, has got the M Sport pack on, which means you get carbon wheels, some billet trinkets around it, and a load of extra carbon fibre, and a lap timer that gets unlocked, which puts this bike, as you see it, at just over 26 grand, which is big money. So it's just as well, it's big on power and big on spec. So the M1000R is an S1000RR engine in an S1000R chassis. You get the top end from an M1000RR and the bottom end from an S1000RR. So there's a lot of R's and a lot of S's and a lot of M's, but the only thing that matters is this bike is massive price tag. Can it justify it? We're just going to find out now. So there it is. You will have noticed there is one bike missing. which is of course the brand new for 2025 Ducati Street Fighter V4. We wanted one on this test, we put in a request for one, and unfortunately, because we're using a control tyre on this test and Michelin don't supply a rear tyre in the same size as what the standard fitment is on the Street Fighter, Ducati have declined to take part in the test. We're gutted about it. The bike absolutely blew us away on the launch and it would have been brilliant to have it here on the test, but alas, the show must go on.
So to keep everything fair on our Super Naked test, they've all been fitted with a controlled tyre. And luckily for us, Michelin have come on board with their new Power 6 road tyre. A sporty dual compound tyre that's harder in the middle for support and durability, but softer on the edges for better grip. Perfect for today. So lots to do, let's get going.
Ploughing.
So we've come to the end of our 3-day test and we're about to have a roundup of how we got on with the Super Nakeds on the runway, on the roads. So we've had a set of criteria that we've agreed on to rank the bikes in our test. And one of the most important ones for all of us was the level of fun that we had, particularly on the runway, and then translating that out on the road. How much enjoyment did we get from the bikes? We're also going to have a look at the engine, handling, the tech that's included on these bikes and how accessible those things are. Also, is it comfortable on the road? Plus, Johnny did a 0 to 60 test on all of the bikes, so we'll have a look and compare those times between each of the machines. So coming in 6th place is the Honda Hornet SP. Now, I think it's worth mentioning from the off, guys, that this is half the price of, well, more than half the price of other bikes in our test. So we've got to forgive it in some areas, but this is a really great example coming out of the Honda factory of a Super Naked that we've not really seen from Honda in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, just to iterate again, it's nice to have this bike here. We didn't expect the world from it, you know, because straight away, just to point these facts out, it's 60 brake horsepower down on the BMW. Not just from a price point of view is it staggeringly less, but in terms of outright horsepower, it's massively lower. And we used to have a criteria for this test where we'd want to be looking at 170 and upwards. So it's under that, but it's here. We had high hopes for it, but it has been in for a shoeing because it's been up against the best of the bikes in this test. And that has shone. You know, there are areas about this machine that are very likable, and there are other areas that kind of make it stand out like a sore thumb. For example, the tech on the bike is very basic. You know, and even the switch gears to operate the tech are quite simple, quite fiddly, even to kind of, in my opinion, get into. It's not the most slick or tactile of kind of switch gears in amongst this group here. Yet the systems work. You know, this bike is, you know, very credible. If you have got that 10K budget, well, then you've just found your winner in this test, despite the fact it's ranked lowest in amongst these super peers that it's got.
Yeah, and some people might like that. The simplicity of it could be argued that that's a good point or a negative point for some people. It depends what you want. But we have to say, like, wherever we've gone on our test and we've pulled up on these bikes, and people say, oh, what bikes are you riding? Oh, we've got the Honda Hornet SP, and that's got the U's and R's. Like, everyone seems to know about this bike, and it's probably from the hype that it got when it was first announced. That price tag got everyone's attention, but everyone seemed to know about this bike.
Yeah, but you've got to have more than just a name. That's the thing. And as exciting as it is for Honda to come into this mix, or we've brought them into this, I should say, it does miss the mark by quite a way in a lot of areas. You know, so for example, in terms of power, as you said, Johnny, okay, off the line, it did an amazing, you know, result. It got an amazing result off the line, which is fantastic. But I did some simple, like put it in sixth and go to 30 miles per hour on all of these bikes. This thing was so slow in comparison to the other machines in the same situation. So real road riding scenario, sixth gear roll on from 30 miles per hour. And that's where, you know, the bigger, more potent rivals that it's up against shone in that respect there. I also found, and maybe, you know, we should point out that it's not like we've gone fettling with screwdrivers and changing all the settings on this thing, but the firmness of this suspension. So as you've said, Grace, this has got the Olin suspension. It was pretty harsh at times, especially compared to the likes of bikes with the reactive suspension.
Yeah.
This thing would have your fillings out if you gave it half a chance. You know, it's on that level there. And it's also really buzzy in the seat, which is something that, I don't know, made it stand out again for the wrong reasons. I've been really critical of a bike, like I said, that is brilliant value. It looks good. Actually, you know, it looks fantastic. And if you're not mad on going all out and kind of doing crazy things, well then there's so much to like about it. I've got to give it some, you know, a pat on the back as such, because it is
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like it scored the lowest in every area on this test, which is credit to the bike that it was holding its own in some areas. But I guess, like you said, Bruce, it's not got that adaptive suspension, which then made it a bit jerkier, and it kind of became apparent within this test how good the other bikes have progressed in technology, yet we can't detract from the fact that you need less cash for something like this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think, you know, it seems like a long time ago since I did the launch for this bike, and you know, looking back and reflecting on that now, it's made me realise that, you know, the launch was very clever in a way, because they took a bunch of us down to Spain, gave us a Hornet SP each for the day, and quite a quick outrider to follow. It was a simple ride up some hills. It was all third, fourth gear stuff. It was just brilliant. It was a simple, straightforward day out on a bike that wheelies really easily. It feels lighter than it actually is. I think we all really loved how it turns, and when you're in that sort of area of the engine, in that mid-range area, so we never did any of the roll-on stuff and all the rest of it, because we just got on some bikes and went and rode in the hills for a day and came back, and that it was brilliant at, and that's all it's supposed to do. Arguably, it can't really be compared to these bikes that we've got here, but we've brought it along because there was been a good reaction, not just for the mag, but in the market in general to this bike. So we've kind of brought it along to say, well, okay, let's see how you do go with the best of the best. You're not part of this gang. This isn't your club, but come and have a go. Anyway.
Yeah.
And, you know, surprise, surprise, it's come up short in a lot of areas, but not every area. As you say, it nailed the 0 to 60 really well, and it wasn't last in the comfort. So, yeah, it does have a lot going for it, and I would say this bike is doing exactly what Honda wants it to do. I think it's made it into this test, and I think that's a win for Honda alone. The fact that it's even here, sharing the same tarmac with these mega bikes. How they can build this bike with Stylemas Brembo calipers and an Öhlins rear shock and a brand new frame, so it's not a carryover from another model. Okay, the engine's a modified 5-blade engine. You know, how they can market this bike and sell it for under 10 grand, and the next cheapest bike in this test is 2.5 grand more. It's actually more than that. Actually, it's nearly 3 grand more. So Honda are just playing a different game with this. They want to they've set out to deliver a simple, straightforward, uncomplicated experience, and I think they've done that. But in this company, it's been blown away.
Two things which I just want to point to. The throttle pickup is quite harsh, quite sharp. It's nowhere near as refined as any of the other bikes. That's one thing that was notable, and especially road riding today, when you go around a corner and you go to drive out, or not even then, you know, if you're pulling away or something like that, the throttle pickup, the initial pickup, is notably sharp. And another thing which I wasn't blown away by was the shifter blipper. It's great, it's got a shifter and a blipper, but there's a very much notchy sense to every gear change up and down the box. That's something that I found every single time. In fact, you can feel it pulsing if you pull the clutch in. So I think it's more the gearbox than it is the shifter or the blipper aspect of the gear change. But you feel the pulse through the cable. which arguably you can on lots of different bikes, but nowhere near as harsh. It almost is a direct relation to that gearbox.
I noticed that as well with the gearbox, that it was slightly clunky at times, or it wouldn't, when it's travelling through neutral, it would go to neutral rather than going from first to second. It wasn't as smooth and, like you say, Johnny, refined as some of the others. But it's almost, how much can you forgive a bike for those things when it's got the price tag attached to it? It's a difficult one to call.
I dare say that there's a lot of scope to keep evolving this product, and maybe the next generation of Hornet, based off the back of the sales success this thing's undoubtedly going to have over the price point, if nothing else, it might fuel better fueling. You know, it's a bit, look at the Fireblade. When that came out, as in the last version, 2020, when that came out, it was revolutionary, but it was also definitely not ideal in quite a few areas, from the gearbox ratios to the braking performance because of the algorithms with the ABS. You know, Honda's gone and worked hard over the course of nearly 5 years to refine that over 2 more iterations of that machine. So it's great this is here, because I think it's the foundation of what is going to come next. And I would hope that maybe even the next time we do this test, we're going to be faced with an updated Honda that's a little bit slicker in a few areas.
This starts our top 6, and it needs a pat on the back for being here, and we can move on to what comes 5th in our test. It is the Aprilia Tuono V4 Factory in 5th place, and I think when we added the scores up, we were all a little bit disappointed that this came in 5th place.
Definitely surprised, yeah.
But I think that shows how track inclined it is, how sporty it is, that something just didn't quite translate to the road, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been of that nature. It's always been a really sporty bike, big, characterful, you know, booming V4. But yeah, I guess when put against some of the bikes that we've had on this test, it's just not as agile, not as easy. You know, it's almost too focused. One thing I found in particular was the relief of switching the rider mode just so that the engine wasn't hunting so much. I mean, if you've got this thing constantly, you know, you're working that throttle and you're wanting to project forward fast, great, you know, sport or, you know, one of the track modes or whatever, makes perfect sense. But for me, I actually spent most of my time on this bike today in tour mode, which blows my mind. But my reason for doing that is because actually it just gives a whole different level of pleasantness to the engine. It's not hunting, you know, at 30 miles per hour, in a 30, in 6th gear, whatever, it's actually remarkably smooth and manageable. And I think that if I owned one of these, I'd probably spend a lot of my time like that, with that tour setting in place, because I'd go to the track to unleash it. That's where this thing belongs.
Yeah, it was a lot more supple, and I think there was a clear difference between the different modes. I had a cheeky go in race mode while we were on the road, and it just sharpened the whole bike up. It became a lot stiffer, it became, stiffer, but with that, I sort of felt a lot more of the grooves in the road because the bike wanted to be more aggressive.
The thing about this bike is exactly that. The beauty of the modes on this thing is that when I think I jumped on it after you, so I had a few goes at it, and I found it too soft. And so I went into the race modes, which is when you picked it up after me, I think. And that was instantly just made the bike, for me, a lot sharper and just tauter. You can still feel its weight, but it's under that much more control. I much preferred it in those modes, more because of what it did to the suspension, less to what it did to the engine. The thing about this bike though, being the V4, there's so much theatre with it, and there's so much extra you just don't get with any other bikes that I just thought was really special, you know. And I was thinking about it when I was riding along. The BMW is like, its engine is out of a superbike, proper bona fide superbike. So on the track, I expect that's probably going to be like absolutely ridiculously good. It's just going to rev and rev and rev and make more and more power, and that's brilliant for the track. But on the road, I think you need something else. You're signing up for a slightly different experience on the road, aren't you? Where where you want a bit of theatre and you want a bit of noise and you want a bit of crackle and pop kind of thing. And that's what this bike does in spades. It's infuriating. I mean, I knocked a lot of points off it for the access to that tech. You kind of end up switching the modes and you're never actually sure how you did it.
Yeah, we all found that and sort of marked it down a bit for that it just became so complicated, especially when we were limited on time. You just want to get going, that actually the menus, the dash was quite difficult to navigate. When you did, it's great because, like we've sort of touched on, the different modes allow you to play around with the bike in different road settings. If you are on more of a bumpier road that's winding and you want it more supple, or you want to get going a bit and you can choose race mode. Yeah. But to do that, it took a bit to get your head around.
Yeah, I think that, the tech is not intuitive. If you owned it, sure enough, you get your head around it. And I did, actually, by the end of the day, by accessing the main menu, you can go in and then you choose your kind of more road focused or track focused options, set all your parameters, etc. Jobs are good, and then on the fly you've got that button on the right to kind of toggle between. But I don't think, even the systems aside and accessing them, I don't think it's the easiest package, with the best switch gears to go into the tech. That's another thing. One thing I should also mention, which is really weird, I used cruise control today on this, which is strange in its own right. It's like you slide the cruise control button, like almost depress it essentially, and then you can go up or down. The lowest it would go was 32 miles per hour, which I couldn't work out, unless I was doing something wrong, in which case apologies, Aprilia, but the lowest I could get the thing to go was 32 miles per hour, which I just found really strange. So tech, it did not blow me away, I'm afraid.
I want to jump in and shout out about the riding position as well, because it's quite a tall bike. It's one of the few bikes on this test that I've climbed on and gone, okay, I'm up here.
This is what grace feels like.
This is what a normal bike feels like to a normal sized person. And I just think, it's not often the bike makes me go, oh, okay, I'm up here, that's fine. That's nice, pleasant to be not folded up, even just when you're sat on the bike with your feet on the floor.
I mean, I found that this was probably the tallest bike for me on the test, which made manoeuvring a bit difficult. And you do feel more on top, you're higher, you got a better view of the road. But what I did notice about the Tuono was that the tank was a lot flatter than the rest of them that were curved. So you can tuck in on this bike. Plus the fairings, I quite liked the body position once you got going on it.
So I did some 0 to 60 times on all of the bikes, and actually, the interesting thing about this bike was mechanically, it's obviously got quite a good sort of clutch setup in it, because I just gave each bike 3 goes, and this one just went straight in and did its best time straight away. And it was the 3rd quickest out of the bunch. So I think that says something about the mechanics of the clutch and that power delivery from the V4, and that all coming together.
I think it just reaffirms the package. I mean, what's interesting is, as we know, that we all mark this bike down on the fun factor, and that's probably because it's too serious. It's actually a bit too serious. And again, it was relatively easy to wheelie yesterday, but it didn't feel engaging in a way that some of the others, you're talking about theatre and the theatrics of it, etc. I think some of the other bikes made you feel much more alive than this when you had it on the back wheel. Yes, it could do it, but everything was very purposeful. And I think that's the message with this bike here. It's a nice bike. It's very focused. And I think, considering the kind of riding we've been doing for this road aspect, for this road test, it's almost stood out for the wrong reasons.
Okay, well, let's see what finished 4th in our road test. The Yamaha MT10 finished 4th in our test, so kind of middle of the road, but we've all said lots of positive things about this bike throughout the day, and I think for me this was the most comfortable bike out of all of them. The high bars, the seat in the peg position, you could crunch through miles on this thing quite easily.
Yeah, I mean, we all rated it really highly on the comfort thing. I think you guys gave it full marks, and it was my second favourite one. We've said time and time again about the MT10, isn't it? It's got the strangest, well, not the strangest riding position. in this company compared to the others. It's the one you get on, and at first you kind of go, well, this is odd.
You're more
I'm not
sat
sure.
down on it.
How's this going to work then?
Yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
And then it does.
But it does work.
It just does.
The
yeah,
handling
yeah,
of it, it still turns in nicely.
Yeah.
It's really great to ride on the road, even though it feels a bit bizarre when you first get on it.
Yeah.
But I think that marries up really nicely, that it's comfortable and it handles well.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, super comfy bike, ideal for the roads. I think Yamaha's had a cracking formula right from the word go with this bike. What it does now is it stands out, you know, the last of that old generation of super nakeds. It was almost that, you know, that initial brutal, big, powerful CP4 powered hooligan machine from, you know, the best part of a decade ago. And they've never really kind of changed the formula that much. I remember going on the launch of this version here, I think it was 2022, and thinking, well, it's just like the last one. I think they actually took a bit of power out of it to make it Euro 5. But despite its age, despite the fact that, you know, there are lighter, faster, you know, propositions out there, there's still so much appeal to this. It still sounds fantastic. It's absolutely fantastic if you want to go crack wheelies on it. The engine is brutal. If you turn everything off, which we had to on the runway, you know, to go do the wheelies we wanted to do, this one really does deserve to come with a warning sticker on the tank, because if ever I was going to flip one of the bikes, this one would have been it. It's brutal, but in a brilliant way. So it's loads of fun. It's not done yet. I guess that's the message with this thing, and especially in a road riding context, there is a lot to like about it. It's not just comfortable, it's characterful. You know, it's head turning because of the noise of it and stuff like that. It's easy to place. Despite the bulk of it, and it looks a big, bulky, shouldered bike, you know, a bit like the Vikings of old and stuff like that. But it's surprisingly easy to get pitching into a corner. You know, it might not be the best when it's in a corner, but it turns nicely. And like I say, there's a lot to this bike still, and the tech on it is very good. A little bit awkward to get into, but the tech is very good, I would say. So,
but like you say, the bulkiness of it disappears as soon as you get on it and you start using it. It handles so well, considering all of that, and off the back of what you're saying about the wheelies, the bulkiness disappears as well, because even when I was having a go, and I'm less experienced than you guys, it was snapping up straight away. And I think that shows like the power and what it's known for. The hooliganism of the MT10 is very much in the soul of this thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, no doubt the star of the show on this bike is definitely the engine, and it's been in that, like I say, since day one. This bike's been around a good while. Yamaha haven't deviated from that plan. Well, they haven't got an R1 anymore to deviate. So if they ever did replace this, it would be interesting to see what they came up with, to be honest. But at this point in time, it's hard to see why they would. It's a brilliant formula. It's fun, you know. It's a fiery engine if you want it to be. And you're going along, and it just doesn't feel like an inline four.
No.
I mean, obviously, because the engine's been around a while and the bike's been around a while, we're in danger of repeating ourselves from previous tests and articles in the magazine. Yeah. But it is nonetheless true that, you know, the cross-plane cranking engine does deliver a very, very particular and unique experience that, you know, unless anyone's tried it, they really should experience it at least once, because it's very hard to put into words, but it sounds like it's doing one thing, but it's delivering performance and like you say, that sort of firepower, almost like by stealth. And that's why I think, you know, sometimes it can catch you out. You're, whoa, you know, kind of thing.
But that paired with the tech that's on this bike, yes, it's got maybe less than some of the other bikes that we've got on test, but I think it's got everything it needs for this package.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it's also worth mentioning how affordable this is. In the company it's in, no, it's not, you know, the cheapest bike in this mix, but it is right down there. You know, it's well over £10,000 cheaper than the BMW for context.
Yeah.
But it's not £10,000 less of a bike. Definitely not. You know, if someone turned up at my door and said, here's 10 grand and here's an MT, I'd say thank you very much, you know, in place of you know, one BMW. So I think there's life in the old girl yet. It's put a smile on my face, that's for sure. And you know, I hope Yamaha keep it going. I think they should do a little bit more work to it. I think they should sex it up a little bit and I don't just mean change the colour of the wheels. We don't need any more bright wheels. Don't go back to fluoro yellow.
Use up that paint.
Yeah, you know, kind of do a little bit more with it. Take a bit of weight off it. You know, make it a bit more aggressive maybe in the riding position. But I'd like to see this carrying on for a while.
I think the other thing is because we requested an SP for this test, didn't we?
Yeah.
Which has got the O-lins front and rear, and a few trinkets on it. And obviously we didn't get one. But in a way, did we really miss the SP? Out here on the road, didn't we?
Yeah.
Bombing around here. Have we really missed the SP?
I think the point is it held its own within the test
I think,
as the base model.
Would we have scored an SP any different?
Well, the main hook with the SP is the suspension, isn't it? And we didn't need that. It's not a bad handling bike. I actually think for sucking up the road, it's done a good job with the suspension that's on it. You know, so maybe the SP would have looked a bit fancier. See
when we get on the track what happens with the SP.
Exactly that.
That's where you would expect
that advantage to shine through.
The advantage to come through. But here on these roads today, you know, I can't honestly say.
Do you know what this bike's biggest threat is? The MT09. I think that the MT09 is now so good and so bang on what people are actually wanting in the market, and you know, from price point, etc. That's probably why Yamaha hasn't put any more time, energy, effort, money into developing this, because they've done all that with the MT09. And in terms of unit sales, I dare say that thing absolutely hammers this. So, you know, when they're not building the R1, of which this is a derivative, why should they keep that progression going? But I hope they do. And yeah, I mean, it's been a cracking bike to have in this test, and fingers crossed we get a new one next year.
We all really like this bike. It's ended up 4th, so let's move into our top 3 now. Starting our top 3 in the road test is the KTM 1390 Superduke R. Now, this one for me was probably the most daunting out of all of the tests because it's such a big brute of a thing. But actually, riding around on the roads, I grew to love it a bit more because that sort of top heaviness of it made it quite nice to flick round corners when you're going at slower speeds or through the little villages that we were going through. But what I also love about this is that twin motor, like the engine is great, and when you wind it on is when it comes alive. It sounds so much better, it performs so much better. I wasn't looking forward to this one, but it grew in my...
we were talking about it. It's like I said, it's a bike you need to spend time with.
What's interesting is, just to kind of go back a little in time, is this bike won our last Naked Sports Bike of the Year shootout on the road. So to see it here in 3rd is really quite interesting, because obviously it's done better in the past, but that's probably a reflection of, you know, other machines up in their game in other areas. So, you know, you went on the launch of this, Johnny, but I mean, it was basically a little bit smarter, larger capacity version of the 1290, you know, in all but name, which is no bad thing because it's a great formula. And yeah, sure, you know, a big stonking V-twin is never going to get boring. And I think actually, you know, as we found the last time we did this test as well, that engine, for all its capacity, is super, super usable and docile when you need it to be. And then when you ask it, it just, you know, ups its heels and goes. It's an absolute beast.
Yeah, so. I mean, what they did with the upgrade, they put in, as well as increasing the capacity, they added the variable valve timing on it, and they redid the entire fuel and ignition maps on it to make that as smooth as possible, to give the best of both worlds. I mean, the torque figures on this just make everything else look like they're playing at it, you know, which is what you'd expect. It's got a massive capacity advantage for a start, 1350cc, and it's a V-twin. Yeah, I mean, I think the pistons in this are something like 110 millimeters diameter. They're like, you know, like literally like that. It's going to be just dishing out big dollops of torque, where the others are revving and making their power in a different way.
Yeah, so, but to contradict that, I mean, just to cut straight to it, this bike didn't do very well in the 0 to 60.
No, exactly.
So despite all that torque, there's a real problem there. And I think this is one of the things within this sector, sports bikes and super nakeds, when you're talking about power figures, you know, especially down the pub, it's fantastic. But it's only when you put them on a track, it's only when you put them on a strip and you actually drop that clutch that you actually find out what that number is truly worth against
exactly.
rivals. You know, you can ignore all those figures because for all the torque it's got,
Getting off
where
the
did
line,
it finish?
Yeah, exactly, second to last. You
Yeah.
know, and that what I found when I was doing that, and it's a brilliant example. Really, you're dead right. Is a combination, I think, of two things. Mainly the fact that it's the only bike out of the 6 that when I was launching it, to get to 60, you had to do a gear shift. You couldn't get to 60, and for all the other bikes, you can just drive straight up to 60 mile an hour in first gear. This one, you had to put a shift in, and if you time that just a fraction too late, of course, you're into the limiter, and it all gets a bit messy. So. Plus, it's quite a tall bike, so you know, like we were saying, you know, if you think how launch devices are working on MotoGP bikes, the lower they are, the drag bikes, the easier it is for them to go forward. The taller they are, the more prone to wheeling, which is exactly what you get. So you throw all that torque in, low down torque, the short gearbox ratios, and the high centre of gravity on this bike. It did make 0 to 6. I even tried launching it in second gear, and it didn't make much of a difference. I mean, it did it fine, but it didn't actually make a great deal of difference.
So you're asking for trouble or wheelies. That's what you're asking for, isn't it? Trouble or wheelies.
Trouble or wheelies, exactly. But I think where this bike is boss is in the roll-ons. You know, when you are in third, fourth, fifth gear ratio on these roads, blasting around.
Never feels lacking.
No, it's always there, isn't it?
And that it contributed to our fun factor as well, because this scored quite highly for all of us. That we had fun on it, and like you say, it wants to wheelie. It's tall, it's top heavy, it's got that torque to push it up as well, and plus with the tech on it that helps you hold it, that all adds to the element of you can get on this thing and have fun. No matter who you are.
Yeah, the bike's got very good tech. I mean, the KTMs have always had good tech, or rather the Superdukes, the big Superdukes have always had good tech. But not just from you know, an actual function point of view, from an aesthetic point of view. It's got a nice clear dash that you can go into the menu very easily. You can understand it, you know, without having to read a manual, and it's quick and easy to alter. I think it's actually got one of the best dashes, not the biggest or the fanciest or whatever, but in terms of function, very, very easy to go into it, alter things, and also to see clearly your gear selection and your speed on that dash. They're big, they're bold, they take precedence over everything else. And I think they've got that very, well, they've got it right. You know, some bikes kind of go too fancy in areas and it compromises, you know, the core information you need. But KTM's done a great job in that respect. I also think as well, this bike is conventional suspension, so it's got manual, adjustable WP units front and rear, but they're very good. They soak up the bumps tremendously well. And again, it does feel like, I don't know, I haven't looked at the travel, it does feel like there's a bit more travel in this bike than, say, something like the Speed Triple, which has clearly got shorter forks. I don't know, without looking at the specs, but there's something about the nature of this. It feels like a cranked up motard. You know, it's a big ass, powerful thing with long suspension, front and rear, and that's what gives it its character. And especially on the roads, that's something to enjoy. It's stable, even if it does, you know, feel like it's supple. It's very stable, enjoyable, but very precise through the corners. And I think that, you know, this is one of those times where, again, maybe I think the Evo comes with the electronic version of the suspension. But does this need it? Maybe not. Not for the kind of riding we've been doing today. You know, it's been more than adequate.
Flatting around, having a load of fun. It's definitely been just what was needed, really, isn't it? I think it's just the main thing about this bike for me is that it is different. It's not the same. Yeah. And that's not for everyone. You know, but if fun is big on your list, it's top of your list, towards the top or at the top of your list of priorities, you really should be. Yeah, this delivers.
Yeah, and it should be top of your list, and that's why it's entered in our top 3, but we have got some new machinery entering into second place. It is the brand new Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RX. So this is the limited edition version of their new RS. And I guess this is so much more sportier than any of the other bikes we've got on test. Although it is classed as a super naked, I would argue it's more super bike in its nature, with the exhaust note, the rear sets, the clip-ons. It's so much more aggressive in its stance. I personally quite like that. I got on really well with the riding position.
Yeah, I mean, this bike is just fabulous, and that difference in the riding position is interesting, how it makes you ride it differently as well. It doesn't obviously just change the dynamic of the bike, it changes your mindset as well. And it's so accurate. There's such a massive feeling of accuracy, especially on the turn in and through the middle of the corner, the way the bike holds its line. And it has got to be a consequence of obviously brilliant geometry and weight distribution and all of those elements. And of course the suspension, that's you know, nearly exclusive to this bike.
I think Triumph has had the balls to take a product like the RS, which is a pretty safe proposition within the super naked sector. You know, it's built for, it's almost like a high performance roadster. It's not trying to mimic, you know, some brands by giving you a 250 or whatever brake horsepower peak figure to shout about. This bike is packing 180.5 brake horsepower, the most powerful Triumph triple motor out of the factory yet. And it's got so much torque. I think it's 129 Newton meters of torque, loads of it. And it just delivers in such a fantastic way. We know that from the RS. Actually, Grace and I were on the launch of that. I was lucky enough to go on the launch of this just the following week and test this thing on track. So I've been super excited to see what it's all about on the roads. And for me, it's really delivered. I actually really like this riding position. As you said at the start, you know you're on something that's that bit more focused and meaningful, but not in a bad way. I didn't find it uncomfortable. I actually felt it more engaging. It kind of, you get on some bikes, so to kind of counter this the opposite way around, you get on an MT10 that sits you really upright with big wide bars, and then you're surprised when it actually has more to offer than the riding position would suggest. This thing, you get on it and you think, do you know what? This is more comfortable than a sports bike, but it is almost like one of those with the fairings ripped off. It means business, but in a more comfortable and road-focused way than a sports bike. And I think Triumph, like I said, going back to it, have had, you know, the balls to go and build something like this. It's limited, 1,200 units, which is still quite a lot of units,
yes,
you know,
yes.
But I think it's fantastic. And it's also worth noting, I think it's about grand and a half more than the RS. So if you are more sportily inclined and you're looking at one or other as an option, this is a no-brainer. I think actually the exhaust can alone, the Akrapovic exhaust can, with a carbon fiber cap on it, it's titanium sleeve, just bolting one of those onto an RS would make it cost about the same as one of these. So, and that's ignoring like the mechatronic steering damper, as you mentioned, the Gen 3 Öhlins electronic suspension front and rear. It's the complete package.
It's got everything you need. I mean, when we were on the launch, it was wet. So that's been my only experience of the RS. So now we've been blessed with this glorious weather and great roads for the RX. And for me, it's the suspension is the star of the show. It's talking to the road, it's talking to you the whole time, adapting to how you're riding it to make it supple, but still with that sporty factor. It's still, you can still crack on, but it just takes everything in its stride without it being unsettled, I found.
Yeah, it's great suspension. I mean, there are 3 different settings, if you like, of suspension, and a lot of them are calibrated into the mode that you're riding in. So, you know, you've basically got comfort suspension. Bearing in mind it's all reactive because it's all, you know, electronically governed, but you've got comfort, you've got normal, and then essentially you've got dynamic. And you can go in, and obviously, you know, the beauty with this package is if we were to take it on track, which we'll go into, you can go into it very quickly and crank up, I don't know, like corner entry support or, you know, acceleration support or whatever. It's the best electronic suspension on the market without a doubt. And as you said, Johnny, there's just this and the missing Ducati Street Fighter V4 that has this Gen 3 Öhlins. On the roads, I've relished this. I think the triple how is fantastic. I love the induction whine on these as well. It's menacing, backed up with that deep throaty bark from the exhaust that only gets better with revs. But at the same time, it doesn't piss you off. It's not the kind of noise that when you're going through villages, you're setting off car alarms and all the rest of it.
It's not obnoxious, is it?
No, it's not. I think it's a beautiful tone. And actually what's interesting is lots of brands have gone down the triple route as well as Triumph. but a Triumph is unique. You can hop on any Triumph triple and you know you're on a Triumph versus any other brand's triple. And that's still the case with this. But as a package on the road, for me, we've been riding pretty much, you know, my back roads on this bike, and I have loved every second on this thing because this is what I'm all about. Actually, if I was to put myself out there and write a list of what I want, this is exactly it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Apart from the fluoro paint,
apart from
because of all the bugs that
I
attracts.
quite like that.
the only mark I put against it, really, which we said, is that at the end of this day, right now, if I had to ride one home, which is about an hour and a half, it's the one I would least want to ride on, because for me, I just found that riding position, whether it's where the foot pegs are further, because they're back higher and further back, as well as the handlebars are lower and further forward than they are on the RS, that there's something about that relationship there that I just felt at some points today. I was like, bearing in mind I've got long legs as well, you know, it just started to become noticeable, not to the point of irritating, but I thought, wow, I'd really not want to ride this one home. But let's be honest, if you buy this bike, you're going to just do what we've been doing.
Yeah.
Which is just razzing around on your local roads.
Yeah.
And it's just been fabulous. And I'm so happy to see Triumph feature at the very pointy end of one of our test results, because let's be honest, they haven't really been this high up for a really long time.
Well, they haven't with the 1200. I mean, the first test we did with the 1200, it got a bit of a kick in.
It did, yeah.
We had a faulty one as well, which didn't help things out. We had to keep taking it to a dealer, but I don't recall it handling anything like as well as this
is
does.
unrecognisable.
Yeah. You know, and for lots of other reasons as well. I mean, the braking performance is on a whole new level compared to, again, what was on there. And that's without even going into the split tech that it's now got and all the rest of it. What I would say in terms of tech is the bike is fully loaded. I mean, there's everything in there that you could imagine, from wheelie control, you know, 4 different levels. You've got road or track ABS, you know, power modes, rider modes, you name it. You can go in onto that dash, flick through it. But one frustration I do have is with the dash itself. It just feels that little bit slower than some of its rivals. I mean, especially compared to like the BMW, which is quick and easy into, you know, and you're flicking through clear menus and all the rest of it. I don't know why, but everything just feels a little bit slower, especially when you're switching from the main menu, which kind of moves to one side for you to open up the criteria of what you're looking to change, which isn't ideal. But the systems themselves work very well. You know, not that, you know, today on the road ride, we've been maybe kicking the ABS off, but I dare say when we take it on track, the fact it has got a dedicated track mode is going to set it apart from, you know, a few machines straight away. Yeah. But I think it's got some brilliant tech, and one which is a little controversial, which could be seen as good or bad, is the wheelie system on this bike. So this is a new innovation from Triumph this year. So you've basically got the IMU talking to the engine, talking to everything on the bike, and culling your power in such a way that you can set a predetermined angle of wheelie, then just twist the throttle between level 1 and 4. It will give you that pitch if you keep the throttle open. On the launch of this, Grace, you can vouch for this, it was beyond frustrating. You know, for people such as myself that have learned to wheelie the hard way, you know, pinch a clutch and balance points and all the rest of it, this thing blew my mind for all the wrong reasons, because there was no thinking involved. And what was really interesting yesterday when we were at the runway, because I had that experience of it, I was able to get on it straight away, trust in the system. And you do have to trust in the system, but just accept, set it's level 4, and it's going to hold a certain angle for as long as you want. You go through the box. Johnny, on the other hand, it was all new to you, and it was...
Well, I had the same experience you did.
Yeah, exactly.
I just
you have to forget everything you know.
Trying to clutch the thing, wasn't having it, and then eventually you explain what to do, which is not to use the clutch and just open it in first, let it come up and just keep putting gears at it, and which I did, and it's brilliant.
It's
works,
brilliant. Yeah. But it's slightly unnerving when you do it for the first time.
You can't describe it as anything other than genius.
Yeah.
But like yourself, having learnt the hard way and done wheelies in a certain way for a certain amount of time, whilst I admire it and I have huge admiration and appreciation for the tech and what it's doing, I just found it quite unfulfilling personally as a device. So if this was my bike, switch it off.
That's the thing, and so would I probably, because yeah, I don't know, it's almost counterintuitive to lean on a system versus listening to an exhaust note or understanding a motor and all the rest of it without getting into wheelies. But at the same time, what this bike gives people is their own wheelie school.
Exactly.
Essentially, if you've got a runway or something like that, all you need to do is twist that throttle and trust in the system, and it will do it for you. And I think if that's what you actually want, if you just want that buzz of pulling a stonking wheelie to show your mates, then this is the one for you, because it's an unbelievable system and it works faultlessly every time. Thinking back to the launch event of this, they didn't tell us what I was going to have to ride, and in my head I hoped we were going to get a Daytona. We haven't, but that's not such a bad thing, because actually this is a lot more real world and probably so much more sporty than any Triumph we've had since the Daytona. You know, so we're going in the right direction.
And it's great to see that Triumph are embracing that. And I think the point of them putting this EC3 system on it, I think they're making a statement. There's, like you say, not that many super nakeds that are sporting this. They've decided to put it on it, added all these extra sporty bits to it. Even that wheelie system, I think it's just creating a more accessible bike to people. Like you say, you've got the option to turn it off if you want to, but it's there if you need it. That's just making more people have more fun, and that's the point with this bike, isn't it? And this bike only lost out just to our #1 space. It was a close contender, but let's see what comes in at #1. So winning our super naked road test is the BMW M1000R. This bike is just phenomenal. I mean, we have to mention that this has got the performance package attached to it, but it's obviously working well, because the thing that stood out to me was how agile this thing was, but also how planted it was on the road. You could really flick it round the bends, give it a bit of throttle, and it would stay put. I really enjoyed riding this.
I think it's a fantastic bike, and again, it's a model that is built off of several evolutions. BMW have had a great formula, and actually, I mean, considering this is a new machine or a new spec of the M1000R for this year, it's not a lot different to the one that I went on the launch of a couple of years ago. I think the biggest difference being the quick action throttle. So yeah, they polished the formula. It's a cracking road bike. As you say, nice and agile, brilliant motor, sounds exciting, dripping in carbon. You could argue they fought their way to the top, but nonetheless, it's a fantastic bike. I've really enjoyed it. Johnny, what's been the highlight for you?
Well, there's a couple of highlights. There's the handling, which Grace, you've already touched on there, and I think a lot of that's down to the carbon wheels, as well as generally good architecture on the bike. But I also love the tech and the way it works and stays in the background all the time. You know, there's never any interference. You never feel like it's there at all. So it actually ends up, for such a high-tech bike, it feels actually quite analog. And there's the button on the handlebars, which is just genius, and it makes you wonder why they all haven't got one, which you just press, and it disables everything on the bike. But you know, it's a hell of a lot of bike. It's a hell of a lot of horsepower, and it's super flexible because we've got the shift cam in this engine. This is out the S1000RR, of course. So you know, it's how flexible it is and how agile it is are the main highlights on this bike.
It's also obviously the most powerful machine in this test, and there is a lot to be said for that. You know, I think, you know, as already mentioned earlier, some brands, you know, they pull out the big figures at a compromise to the mid-range, but BMW, as you've said, with the shift cam, have been able to kind of still keep that sweet spot of, you know, good torque, relatively low down, but the buzz up the top. But I want to talk about the buzz up the top, because that's something that, again, has been consistent on the S1000R, the M1000R from day dot, and also on the XR, and I guess quite typical of all the BMW inline fours. They do buzz. That seat there is like a beehive. When you've got this thing kind of over 6,000 RPM, it's electrified with vibrations, and you feel it through the bars, you feel it through the pegs. It's a vibey bike, and if you can live with that, jobs are good un, but it's something that's worth noting. If you don't like vibes, I want to flag that bit up because it is a reality of it. And the other thing, while I'm on about the comfort side of things, the seat is relatively firm. I don't think it's very forgiving, you know, if you like a bit of padding. But aside from that, you know, it's a nice sized bike. The seat isn't that high off the ground, doesn't feel ginormous or whatever. The bars are just almost straight flat as well, which is another anomaly that sets this thing apart from everything else. Yes, the Triumph has got clip-ons, but arguably, you know, they're probably not much different, you know, above the yoke in height because they're so flat, whereas all the other bikes, they flute up, you know, so...
I quite liked that though, like with the manoeuvrability, the wide bars almost made it, you know, you're doing a U-turn and you're navigating somewhere that's a bit tighter, the wide bars almost helped with that. Plus, like you say, the seat, yeah, it is vibey, but all of the tech I think is helping to create a bit more of a supple ride, a smoother ride. I liked as well that it was also easy to access the twizzle wheel that's on the left side, but also you've got things on this bike like it's got that hill start climb, but it's all those things that help you in real world road situations though.
Yeah, I just want to chip in one thought on the engine really. I mean, it is a masterpiece in engineering to have that flexibility and that horsepower, because you're dead right, you know, some bikes that, you know, manufacturers put out bikes with big numbers and they're virtually unusable on the road. And you know, when we were messing around doing the wheelies, this is when you can pick up at really low revs, and if it didn't have that flexibility, you wouldn't be able to do that. You know, if all right, it's got 200 plus horsepower, and if it didn't have that flexibility, even then you'd have to rev the shit out of it to get up there and then go for your wheelie. But actually, you can wheel it like the KTM. You can literally pick it up, and then you can just plough into that revs. And
it's
next
got a nice
halfway down the runway, you know, and it's just a fabulous thing. But I do want to say, you know, in the company of others on this test, and I'm thinking in particular about, you know, the Triumph and the KTM and the Aprilia, the engine is a bit soulless on the road. It does what it does, and it does it brilliantly. But there's no real theatre with it. And we talked about theatre on the Aprilia, and this has none.
Yeah, I mean,
but you know, it's an instrument.
On this test, we've been lucky to have a plethora of, you know, options. We've had V-twins, we've had triples, we've had fours, V4s, and we've had cross-plane fours. So we've had them all, realistically. But yeah, I mean, this for me is a little bit like the Hornet. Yes, it makes more noise, and you know, it definitely carries more excitement up the top end. But yeah, if you want a bike based on engine character, then maybe it's not the one. You know, you'd have to go down the route of fitting a very loud can on this to kind of bring the ambience, you know, up a few levels.
Just make it really obnoxious then, wouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe.
But
it's a classy bike. I mean, like I say,
bike.
Sat here looking at it with all the carbon fibre on show, it does look nicely put together. It's got a beautiful finish to it.
You can't deny it is really, really fast and really, really good at going around corners. And you know, it is a lot of fun.
Do you know, there are going to be people, you know, watching this wondering why did we not have the S1000R in place of the M? And especially considering the price hike of this bike, you know, at one end of the spectrum, we've got the Hornet, and the poor old Hornet has done its best. For its price, it's done amazing. And here we are celebrating a bike that's costing nearly 3 times as much, which is crazy when you actually think about it. But we also wanted the opportunity to have the best of the rest. So we wanted the RX instead of the RS, etc. So we thought, you know, let's aim for the sky where we possibly could. The same with the Hornet. In fact, we had the SP over the base model. So if you're wondering why we've got this instead of the S1000R, that's the reason why. You don't have to have all this spec on it. This is a particularly specky M1000R. I think actually the base M1000R is like 20 grand.
No, it's 10 quid short of 20.
So that's the base model if you want it. But if you want the trinkets, the carbon fibre, a few more rider modes and all the features, then get one of these. It's fully loaded. And especially if you want the light handling. The way this bike turns, as you've already said, was the best on test, and also the easiest to do a U-turn on.
Yes, it's loads of steering lock.
It has, yeah.
It's got practical stuff as well.
It's a great road bike, and it deserves to be at the top here. You know, BMW's put together a fantastic package. It's just that it maybe stands out on its pricing because other bikes are less costly.
Yeah.
In a world where, you know, the choice is yours between whether you want to spend more to get more or spend less and have less, why wouldn't you go for the top? I guess that's what BMW's for, and that's why they put this package together. But this test has shown us that, you know, whatever your budget, chances are there's a machine for you. The same when it comes to character, the same when it comes to fun, outright performance, comfort, whatever. The super naked scene is fully loaded right now, and I think that that's been, you know, the big message in this test. Really, we've had an amazing time on the roads, on the runway, getting to learn these bikes and experience the true potential of them and see just how different they are, because they are super different, not just in price but in performance, in character, in every single trait. So yeah, it's been pretty epic, hasn't it?
And it goes to show what's on offer in the market. You've got such a range, depending on your pricing budget or what you want out of a bike, your components, and it's all subjective. We've had disagreements, agreements along the way, but it's been great nonetheless to see different manufacturers come out with different things. So on that note, we would like to give a big thank you to all our backers for this Fast Bikes test, the manufacturers that are involved, Michelin for getting on board for our tyres. So what's left next is to take all of these bikes out on track and see what we make of them around Cadwell Park. You can also find an in-depth write-up in the Fast Bikes magazines, so make sure you pick up your latest copy. If you like this video, then hit that thumbs up button and give us a subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.